Are you guys able to see my screen? Okay, fine. So right now, what we're going to see is we're gonna look at test ng. Okay, the same way as JUnit. Since so we have separate jars and the way we execute JUnit, this is exactly the same. Only thing is it comes with additional features. And mostly for the Selenium as such, we use testng for writing the test cases. Uh, JUnit was for more of a practice kind of thing, where you can just write a test cases and then uh, have a grip of it. Now, testng is actually the place where a Selenium test case is generally written, mostly. Okay. Now there is no restriction that you should not write in JUnit. That is why we have covered the JUnit part. But if you see most of the projects, it is TestNG which is the suite or the test framework which is used for writing a Selenium test case. Okay, so first step is setting up the test engine. Okay, now to set up the test engine, go to Eclipse help. Okay, click on install new software and then copy this particular URL. So moment you paste this particular URL, you will see this test ng appearing over here. Yeah. So what I was saying is we are going to look at testng. Okay. Testng is another testing framework, as in another, just like JUnit, we have testng. Okay. Now JUnit is basically Java test case unit test case framework, whereas testng is mostly for the is a bit advanced version, and most of the Selenium test cases are written used using this particular testng. Okay. Now there is no such restriction that you should not use JUnit for test writing a Selenium test case, because it is still possible to execute it, but this is most widely used test suite for writing a Selenium test case. Okay. Now, as a starting step, what we are looking at is we are looking at how do you set up this particular uh, test engine. Okay, the same way how you guys have downloaded jars for uh, adding other library files like PyJars and JUnit jars, etc. So the other way of downloading a easy way of downloading jars and installing it into Eclipse plugin is this. Okay, for which you guys have to go to help. So you have Eclipse. So you have help in Eclipse. So inside help, you will have install new softwares. Okay. So once you click on it, you will see this particular pop-up coming up. In this pop-up, you have to paste the URL, the one which I just pinged in the chat. So you'll have to paste this URL. Then once you paste it, you will be able to see this testng item appearing in this list bottom. So you select that particular list. And then you click on next. So once you click on next, it will just show the list of libraries which will be installing. So you just click next again, say accept the terms and conditions, click on finish. Once you click on finish, the testng, all the jars required for that will be downloaded and then installed in your Eclipse project. Okay. Fine. Since I have already done that, I am not clicking on finish. So you guys, once you guys click on finish, all the jars required for test ng will be downloaded into your Eclipse. Okay. So that is the setup for test ng. Are we clear? Should we see it once more? Okay, fine. So, so this is generally most of the inbuilt plugins. If at all you want to install, you can always go to the help and you can click on new software, and then all you have to know is find out is what is the URL for Eclipse download. Okay, once you get this Eclipse URL, next is just selecting it and next. A simple setup process. Okay, that URL for the required package is the only important thing. The rest will be taken care of the Eclipse. Okay. Now, so once the test ng is set up, so we can actually go ahead and create a test case. So what we will be doing right now over here is we are going to rewrite the same test case which we had earlier, and see how it actually works in test engine. Okay. Now the whole flow of test cases remains the same. Okay. So pre-processing, processing, and post-processing. The concept is the fundamental concept, which remains same in all the test suites. So JUnit and TestNG both follow the similar method. And as I said, all the things which you do in JUnit are supported in TestNG. Only thing is we have the additional features, right? So let's go. Only thing is another one more item is the annotations. So the major difference in your code which will come is during the annotations part. Okay, so when you actually write an annotation before a function, the thing which you need to take care is that this particular annotation is coming from TestNG, not from JUnit. Okay, so I'm gonna change this. So the annotation for pre-processing in TestNG is at the rate before test. Okay, so I'm gonna select that, and the post-processing is at the rate after test. So you guys can see here it is org.testng.annotations. Okay, so this is something which you guys have to include when you want to run a testng test case. Okay, and even the test at the rate test, so we have the same test class in org.junit, but we'll have to include the test case which belongs to org.testng. So I'm gonna comment all the library files which we are not being used. Okay. So once you do this, the this particular piece of code is ready to run in test engine. So there is one question where these jars will get downloaded. Okay. Now, if you guys remember, we have not included any additional jars for JUnit as such, right? So when you actually created a project, it came with the default packages which are inbuilt in Eclipse. So the way you have actually included the test engine, sorry, JUnit, same way you don't really have to include an additional jars for test engine, but then the Eclipse maintains a central repository for all its jars, which will be all these common plugins. So when you right click and say run as, okay, so it actually gives, if at all it's a JUnit, then it gives JUnit, right? So that's because it's a common internal plugin inside a Eclipse, right? So for Eclipse to actually do this, it has to have the jars which are in a central repository which is accessible across all the projects. Okay. So the jars which right now get downloaded through that help will be posted in that particular central repository only. Okay, fine. Now, once you write this code, once you change the annotations for test case, okay, according to test engine, there is one more way, but we will come to that later. Okay, so let's run this and see what exactly happens once you run this particular piece of code. Okay, okay. So it ran exactly the same, not much difference, right? Correct. But let's just try a refresh the project and see what we get. Okay. So we get something called as test outputs. Okay. Here, what happens is we get a default report. So this is a automatic report which will be generated by TestNG. So which will help for submitting as a proof, showing that these are the test cases and these are the status of the test case. Okay, so this is an additional feature which is given by the TestNG test suite. Okay, where the reports will be automatically generated and we can straight away use this particular set of reports for submitting as a test output. Okay, this will be in a submittable format, and where your managers or anybody can actually just use this login or HTML page and see what is the test case output in a report format. So what we made just now is a suit. Okay. So what do you mean by create suits? Yeah. So what we made just now is nothing but a suit. Only thing is we have only one single test case written. Okay. Now if you have, and second thing, you will never have all the 100 test cases written in a single class. Okay. So you will have multiple classes which will be for each page. Okay. So generally one particular class is dependent upon, it will be dedicated for one single page, and all the test cases for that particular page will be uh, present in that single particular class. Okay, so that whole combination of classes is nothing but a suit. So what we are seeing right now is a miniature version of the same suit. Okay, but if we are using testng, there is another way where you can actually run this multiple suits as such. Okay, that is by using the testng xml. Okay, so this is something which we have to create manually. I will send you guys this xml. Okay, so in this xml you actually add all the classes which you want to run. Okay, so if for example here I am trying to run this login automation class, correct? So what I do is I actually let me just copy the package. Okay, so here we have a very good question. So that is what I'm answering. Okay, so using testng, so we have this provision of triggering a test case from an XML. Okay, and an XML, what we do is we just configure what are all the test cases we have to run. So we can actually pick the respective classes which we want the test cases to be executed, and we can run those particular set of classes. Okay, so if you have 100 test cases, and each all those 100 test cases are divided among 7 to 10 files, then all you have to do is you have to make this particular test case, testng.xml. Okay, and you will have to include these all those classes over here. Okay, so once you add all these classes, which essentially means you are actually selecting those classes for execution. Okay, then once you click on this XML and say run as testng suite, it will execute all the test cases which are present inside those classes. Again, so if you are including only the class, it will execute all the test cases which are present at the rate test, all the functions which contain at the rate test inside those classes. Okay, did I answer your question, or you want me to repeat? So you just have to refresh. No, the screenshots are not generated automatically by the report. It has to be explicitly taken. Okay, and I will show you now how exactly that is being done. Fine. So we just refresh this page. It will almost be the same. So the name of the test suite is what you actually specify over here. Okay, so you can name the report, and so since we have only one, so it will actually list down all the test cases which are actually run over here. Okay, so this is one additional, the second additional added advantage of using the testing. Okay, now another feature, important feature of TestNG as such is, okay, you can group the test cases. Okay, so when you write at the rate test, you can specify the group as such. Okay, and inside your TestNG XML, okay, you can specify those groups. Okay, and the XML will run exactly those test cases which belong to that particular groups. Okay, this is another one. So as one of you guys have asked, what if there are 100 and 150 test cases and you want to execute only one set of test cases? So if you have to among, if you have 100 to 120, it's not that every time you run 100 to 120 test cases. There might be specific scenarios which you might want to run, and for that there might be specific test scenarios which you would have written across different files. Okay, now one way to execute all of them is you just come here, specify the classes, that is the default one, and you can group all those tests with a group name. Okay, with, it's just a name which you give a label. Okay, so you can label them using the groups, and you can specify the group name in which you want to execute the test cases. So this can be multiple. Okay, so you can give any number of uh, group names. Okay, and run this particular XML, which will run exactly the groups. First, it will actually go and select the classes, and among those classes, wherever you have the group name, it will run only those groups. Okay, it will run only the classes which are the test cases which has those groups. Okay, I think there is some error. Okay. Hey, yeah, I'm not speaking anything. I'm just checking what exactly the error has gone wrong. I've not spoken anything. So you just have to pick up the exact annotation which you have to run. Right. Fine. So there is some annotation issue. So I will check that out and let you guys know. But overall, this is how you actually run a test engine. Okay. Is this clear? Or do you guys want me to repeat once more? Hello? Right. So the groups, what I'm saying is, assume that, so you have these three classes, correct? Assume that each one of them belong to a separate page. Okay. So you have one big application, and in that application contains three pages, and you have written three test classes, which actually test each page. Okay. Now you want to test one complete flow of an application where all three pages are included. Okay, so in that case you don't really have to run all the test cases in all the pages, correct? Yes or no? Now in that scenario, if you have a specific set of test cases to be run, to be executed, then how do you pick up only those test cases and run it? So that is the question. So when you say you are picking up a specific test cases, those test cases combinedly will form a test functionality of the whole application. Okay, for example, you have two test cases from this class, one test case from this class, and three test cases from this particular class to be executed to run to check the complete functional flow inside an application. Now, how do you go ahead and pick up those particular test cases alone to be executed? Okay, in one shot. For that reason, what you can do is you can actually write these groups. Okay, you can actually specify a additional attribute just the way we have attributes in HTML. Same way for this annotation at the rate test, we have the attribute called as groups. Okay, so these groups you can actually give a label. So for that class, for a test case over here, here and here, so like 2 1 plus 3 6, for all these six test cases you can give a single name, so you can give the same label, okay, or group of labels, it's up to you. Once you give it, you all you have to do is you have to come here, you have to include all the classes, and in the groups you will have to include those tags. Okay, so once you include those particular tags which you have grouped, so only the test cases which are included inside the groups will get executed. Okay, that is the purpose of the groups. Right now I think there is some annotation issue, that is why I'm not able to run it, but that is the functional importance of groups as such. So that is nothing but grouping of test cases. Okay, fine. So this is the overall topics which we have in Selenium as such to start with. Okay, so if you have guys, so we are actually done with the topics as such. Now there are a couple of more topics which I'll just check it out once and I'll show you guys. And if you guys have any doubts in the topics which you have discussed in all these classes, you guys can ask. Else, you guys please continue with your assignments. Okay. If you guys have any doubts, so this is the overall topics in Selenium as such. Okay. So you guys have any doubts? Any topic which you guys want me to repeat? So we have today and tomorrow. Okay, log4j. Log4j is one topic. Next, I am here to show how to take a screenshot. I will show it today. That is one. And see, everybody is clear with all the other rest of the topics. Okay, using an Excel. All right. So we will discuss that. Um, so others can please you can log into those machines and start you know continue with your assignments. Okay. So tomorrow is the deadline. So you guys have to finish your assignments by tomorrow. Whatever assignments I have given. So we have three phases in the assignments. So you have time till tomorrow because tomorrow is another additional hands-on sessions we're gonna have. So I'm gonna be online. So whenever you guys face any doubts, you guys will, are open to ask, and I can clarify it then and there. Okay. After tomorrow's session, it will. So if you guys still face any issues or something, it will be through mails. So there won't be any session as such. So tomorrow will be one another hands-on session as such. Okay. Mm, so we have 20 instances right now. Yeah, another important thing. So whenever you are done a certain set of tasks inside those machines, so at the end of the day, make sure you actually take the backup of the code which you have done, because depending upon the situation, the instances might be restarted or it can be terminated and new instances can be launched. So please take the backup of the assignment progress which you have done, so that whenever you start working the next day, if at all your data is lost, you can always restore it. Okay. So this is another very important thing. So please do at the end of the day, please make sure you have the task or assignment which you have done in your local. Fine. And the instances will be there till tomorrow. If you guys want for till Friday, I can give seven other instances, or it will not be all 20. So we can have some shortened list of instances. I can give it to you, which will be there till the end of the week. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so you guys are able to use those machines. Any issues in the machines? Yes, no. Site is blocked. Can you give me the machine IP? Everybody is facing the same issue. So if one is blocked, try the other one. The one I made today, right today morning. You can pick up the ones in the starting and you can try them. So if one is blocked, please pick up randomly other one and then try it out. Especially the machines from this. Please try it out from this. So these are freshly renamed. The new IPs are assigned. I don't think these IPs should be blocked. So can you guys please pick up from this and try it out? Okay, fine. So we have two people asked two topics, Log4j and then Excel. So those guys just have a look at it. Let's go through these two topics once more. So none of it is not working, Shutosh. None of the IPs are able to. You are not able to open any of the IPs. These IPs. Okay. Then you guys have to talk to your network operator. I don't see any other way where you guys can access this system. If HTTP web page has been blocked, then I don't see any other way where you guys can access it as such. So I think Venkat is the point of contact as admin for you guys. Yeah. So please talk to him and make sure at least these IPs are open for you guys. Okay. So I will actually let this open for next 2 3 days. So make sure you guys have access over these machines because this is the only place where you guys are able to make your assignments and practice. So just talk to the concerned person, and make sure it is unblocked. Okay, fine. So meanwhile, just have a look at it. So we're gonna go through two more topics once more, the Log4j and Excel, and we also will be having a look at how to take a screenshot. Okay, so starting with Log4j. Log4j is a basic replacement of a SISO statement, and a SISO statement is something which is used only for development by developers. But when it comes to production as such, you are not allowed to make any SISO statement, okay, inside your program. So in those scenarios is where you actually come up with these loggers. A logger is basically used for three purposes. First purpose is to actually print a statement stating that the program has reached a particular state, or whatever a suitable statement, if at all you want to say in behalf of a program, you can actually use a info logger. Okay, and after that we have a debug logger, which is basically used for printing the calculations which are any sort of logic, business logic. Whenever you write any sort of business logic, the output of those business logic, or the input read for that business logic, will be logged as a debug statement, so that whenever in the production if something goes wrong, so you can start the same program in a debug mode, and you can check those debug statement and see where exactly in the program the execution has gone wrong. And this can be done without actually opening the code and going through and debugging the code as such. So that is where the logs becomes pretty crucial. That will be the first uh, site of target which a general technician looks at. So whenever something goes wrong, first thing he actually takes up is the logs generated by the particular program. Okay, so that is where it becomes crucial for a developer. So it can be a testing developer or a program developer to put logs in all the places. Okay, so that is the info log and debug log. And the error log is something which you actually put in the catch block. So whenever you have a try catch block, whenever the program reaches a catch block, you log that particular scenario with some error log. Okay, so you say log dot error, and then you use some statement. It can be a custom statement, or it can be a print stack trace. So these are three kinds of logs which we have when you say a log4j. Okay, so we have info, we have debug, and we have error. Info is for generic statements. Debug is to actually print the business logic or the variables which contains the business values. Okay, error is whenever you find an error, if you want to do a print, so you use log dot error. Okay, so these are the types of logs which we have in a log4j. And in the regarding the setup as such, so you will need to have this log4j jar file, so in your project. So you need to have this, you need to copy or download this log4j. It generally comes in various packages. So right now we have downloaded from the PyJars. Okay, so once you have this log4j, uh, next thing is to actually construct this log4j.xml. In this log4j.xml, we have two important parameters to be set. So first is the file name. Okay, the file name in which the log file has to be created, uh, and you can also specify the path if at all you want the log file to be generated in a different path. Okay, and the mode in which the log4j has to execute. Okay, so there are two modes: info mode and debug mode. Okay, when in a general production you actually run it in a info mode, where only the simple statements which you put across the program stating where exactly the program execution has reached, those items will be printed. So when I said there are three types of logs: info logs, debug logs, and error logs. So when you start the log4j's execution in an info mode, only info and error logs will be printed. Okay. But if something goes wrong, if you want to actually see how exactly the business logic values are being read and how is the processing happening step by step, then you actually start this particular log4j in a debug mode. Okay. So moment you write debug here, it will start in a debug mode. Fine. Okay. So this is the basic setup. So you need to include the jar file. Step number one. Step number two is to set the log4j XML. So once this is done, the setup for log4j is done. Okay. Step number two is using the log4j inside your class. Now, for using the log4j inside your class, first is you will have to instantiate or initialize the logger, for which you will have to run this as static final. You have to use this log manager and you'll have to specify the class name. So this is a basic syntax. So mostly you can just reuse it. Only thing you have to do is you'll have to change the class name before you actually initialize in a different class. So that will be the only change which, in the syntax which you guys have to remember. So once this is done, the logger is ready for using. Now it is just up to the developer or the test case developer to go ahead and then put all the logs or the statements across all the program. So more logs you put, more detail the logs will be generated, and more detail you will actually have a view of how the program is actually executing without even looking inside a code. Okay. And once you run this log, this is how a log file would look. Okay. So you have the class name, you have the tag info debug error, and you have the statement which you give the message, and you also have the timestamp at which the particular statement has executed. Okay. So all these are pretty handful statements which will act as a proof of that your program has run and what time and what class, where exactly it has gone wrong, etc. Okay. So this is the overall log4j part. So you still have any questions? Okay. And the second question which we have got is we just want to revise the Excel. Okay. Now Excel again is just a helping tool or a file which if you have a list of inputs to be passed on to your program or a test case, you can use Excel for that particular scenario. Okay. Again, there is nothing to do with a Selenium test case and a Excel. Excel is only a helping file where you can actually, or it is which is generally being used across all the places for for putting all your list of inputs and generating the respective outputs. Okay. Now, how do you use an Excel? So, for using an Excel as such, you will have to download the POI jars. Okay. I have already shared the URL. Even if you don't have a URL, no issues. So, you just have to open the browser, search for POI jars download. Okay. So, once you Google it, take the first link. Okay. And get this .zip. In the binary distribution, click over the POI jars distribution and click over the first link over here. So once you click, you will be downloading the POI jars, and once you unzip, so it will be a zip folder. Once you unzip, you will find this particular folder. Now inside this folder, you will have to copy all these 6 jars, plus you don't need JUnit as such. You can copy these 3 jars. 6 plus 3 9 plus 1 10. So 10 to 11 jars you will have to copy it to your lib folder of the project. Once you copy paste it over here, select them, right click, add to build path. So that way you will be including all the jars required for accessing an Excel file, accessing and managing an Excel file. So these are the jars required for handling an Excel. Okay, so once you have included this, then the next step is actually to write a program which will do all the functional handling of an Excel file. That includes first reading an Excel file. So in general terms, in a programmatic terms, when you want to read any file, first thing is you actually give a path for that file which exists in the local, and then you will have to read it and store it in a variable. And then you can use that particular variable to read the content or add the content and do deletion of a content, and any action you can actually perform using that variable. Now when you do the actions using that variable, all the details will be stored in that variable. But then if you want the changes which you have done using that variable to be reflected inside a file, you will have to write back to that particular file. So there is a write operation which you will have to do to make sure the changes which you want are reflecting inside that file. Okay, if you do a broad classification, in order to handle an Excel, you will have to write functions for reading the file. You will have to write functions for accessing the content inside the file. It can be add, it can be read, it can be delete, or it can be anything. So the actions inside the file, and at the end, if you want to write it back to a file, you will have to write a function to write it back to a file. Okay, so these are the three main broad classifications of the logical functions which you will have to write in order to handle all the scenarios in the Excel. Okay, now if we go line by line of the code, so we have written a function, a generic function, which will accept the path, the file path of the Excel located in the local machine, and this sheet name. So Excel contains multiple sheets. So at a time you will be able to read only one thing, or one variable will contain only one sheet. So you will have to pass the sheet name and the file path. So once I have the file path, I will use file input stream, which is a inbuilt package of Java for reading the Excel file as such. So once I read this, I'm going to use this XSS workbook class, which comes with a py jar, which we have included in the project, and I'm going to pass this object for this class. So this class will actually read all the sheets, the complete Excel, and keep it in this variable. Okay, then I will use this particular variable and read or get the required sheet which I have passed in this particular function. Okay, so after doing this statement, this particular variable will have the all the content which is present in that Excel in that particular sheet. Fine. So this function is a constructor, okay, which will be used for initializing the Excel as such. Right. Once I do this, I have written a couple of functions over here, which does respective functionalities as such, which is used for executing respective functionalities as such. Okay, so one function I have written over here is to get the number of rows which are present in a selected sheet. Okay, so I'm going to use the same variable Excel sheet and say get physical number of rows, which will give me the number of rows which are present in that particular sheet. Okay, so that number I will just return, and it is again up to the place where I'm calling how I'm going to use it. Okay, and the next set of functions I have written is where I will pass the row number and the column number. So once you give the row number and column number, which means you are pointing out a respective cell. Okay, so when I give a row number and a column number, it will actually nail down to a single cell. Okay, so this particular function over here will read the will actually take the row number and column number. So I'm going to use this Excel sheet variable and say get row. Once I get the row, I'm going to say in that row select this particular column. So that is basically the cell number which I will give. Okay, once I get the cell, identify the cell, I'm going to read this particular cell as a string value. So that particular cell has to be a string content, and one I'm going to read that particular content and then I'm going to return. So that is what this function does. So this function is basically used for pointing out a particular cell in the sheet of an Excel and retaining it. The same way I have written another function to actually do does the same functionality, but this particular cell should contain a integer or a double value. Okay, so this is to read a string value, this is to read a number. So I have written two functions for reading. The same way I have written another function for writing it back to an Excel, where I'm going to take the row and a column by which I will be pointing out a specific cell, and then I'm going to take also accept the input value which I will have to write it into that cell. Okay, and if you see the code, I have used Excel sheet dot get row dot get cell dot set cell value. So this particular item or this particular function will write or maintain or will actually write back the uh, value which I have passed to this function into that particular cell location. Okay, and if you observe, all these actions are performed using this only a variable, which essentially means all this data is still in memory only. It is still in a RAM. It is not in the hard disk file. Now, to transfer that content which is present inside the memory, which is RAM, back to the hard disk file, we will have to use this particular variable or the Excel workbook as such completely, and we will have to write it back to the file. So that particular action is being performed using this particular function. Okay, so in this function I'm accepting the file path, and using the file path and file output stream, which is again inbuilt Java function, I'm actually writing the file, the content which is present inside the Excel into that particular file. I'm going to use this object and write it to this particular path. So whatever file path I give, so it's going to write the content into that particular file, and then I'm closing these two objects handlers. Okay, so that way this particular function will help me to write the content which is there in the memory back to a file. Okay, now if we go back to the usage as such, I have used the function which we have defined over there in this login automated test, where the first thing is initializing the class. So this Excel OB class, where I will pass the path of the Excel and the sheet name. So that way, this particular object which has these two class variables will have the content which I want to read. Okay, so using this class object, I'm going to use the functions which are defined over here to perform the desired actions in my test case, where the first thing I do is read the number of input username passwords which are present in the Excel. So I do get rows, which will give me the number of rows, and I'm going to iterate through each row. Once I iterate through each row, I know the row number which I am present, and I know that at the 0th position, which is the first column in the Excel, belongs to, let me go open that Excel. What is the path? Desktop temp login check. Right. So I know that the first column is for username message. So in the function which I have written, so I will actually say, get me the string value for the ith row, which is ideally the loop which you are following, and the 0th column. So which will return me a value which I will be storing it as a username. The same way, the same row, the second column is basically contains the password. Okay, so that I'm going to store it as password. Then once I read these two inputs, I have performed a particular login action. I have tested if the login is successful or not. Once I have tested, so I have two scenarios: either login is successfully happened or login has failed, for which I will have to set the third column of that particular row with the result. So I say set cell data, which will actually set the value for a given row and a column and the desired value. So here I give the I, which is the loop iteration which we are following, and I know that the third column is used for the result. So I pass 2 and I pass the statement success or fail. So with this, once all the iterations are done, the results are actually set inside the Excel. So in the iterate after test, I will say save Excel data, and I will pass the file path in which it has to be write back. Okay, so this particular function will actually take all the changes which I have done in the Excel and write it back into the file. And once you open this particular Excel, you will be able to see the outputs generated by the test case. Okay, so this is how you actually use an Excel, overall usage of an Excel as such. Okay, is it clear? Okay, now there was one more question regarding how do you take a screenshot. Okay, for which we have written this small piece of code. Now in order to take a screenshot, um, you will have to initialize couple of classes. Okay, so first is, as I said, so there are two different items. One is having the data in memory, second is having the data inside a hard disk. So the same scenario where we follow in Excel, where we maintain the content in RAM, and then we at the end, once everything is done, we write it back to a file. The same way, we have the screenshot also, where you actually have to, let me wrap it. Just a minute, guys. Hey, hey, Venkat, I'm in a session right now. The Selenium session is going on. Anything urgent? Yeah, tell me fast. Yes, missions are up and running. So yeah, so missions are up and running. You want me to send the IPs? I have restarted them so that at least once the IP changes, the network will not detect the blockage as such. That is why I have restarted the machines. So is there any way where I can send you the new set of IPs? Sorry, so that was I think your point of contact. So he will enable the IPs for you so that you will not face any issues in accessing those machines. Fine. So as I was saying, first step every time is to actually get the content in the memory, and the second step is you actually write it back to your file. Okay. The same way here, when you actually reach a particular stage in your test case, okay, in this scenario, what I am doing is, if you see the same login test, once I execute the username and password, okay, I am actually taking the screenshot of the state of the web page of the web application, okay, and I am actually storing those screenshots which I have taken into the file which contains the username underscore password as the file name. Okay, fine. And for executing this screenshot as such, you don't really have to download any other. So whatever jars you have included so far contains all the classes required for taking a screenshot. Okay, so let's just execute this and see how exactly this will work. Okay, now again, so this is the syntax which you will have to follow. So first step is for taking the screenshot as such. So at that particular moment, it will grab whatever is the web content in a PNG format. So the variable screen HST will actually contain the content, and then what you will do is you will have to copy the content whichever is there inside a variable into a file. Now if you see here, I am using this particular variable as an input for copy file, and here I am giving a new file. The name is, you can actually hardcode the name, but since there are multiple screenshots right now, I have dynamically created the uh, name so that I don't overwrite the same image as such. Okay, so this is the statement which you will have to use for writing it back into the file. That is basically creating a PNG. Okay, so I think I have executed it once. Let me just clear it out. Okay, so once I run this particular program, at the end of it, you will be able to see uh, all the screenshots after the login. For all the cases, you will have the screenshots, respective screenshots for the login. Okay, so once the test case is executed, you can go to this place and you will be able to see the test cases, the screenshots taken. Okay, so you will have to explicitly write this piece of logic for taking the screenshot in the required scenario. Fine. So these were the questions so far. So any other questions? Still have some more time. You guys are free to ask and we can clarify with each right away. So there is a question, but when we take screenshot using IE driver, always slows down the performance of the script. So how exactly are you taking the screenshot? So you have tested it in the IE driver Selenium as such. And secondly, when you say performance, it completely depends upon the machine also. So it's about amount of the memory which is being taken by the uh, web page as such versus the amount of memory using TestNG and WebDriver. Mm, I'm not sure. That we'll have to check. Did you just take a screenshot and try it out? Is it like how long does it take? Because I have not tested with IE as such. I generally use Firefox and Chrome. So IE, I don't know. So I'll have to test it out once. Okay. So one more small, since we have additional time. So let me explain you one more Java concept. Do you guys know what is a final used for? So we have seen what is a static, correct? So you guys know what is a final for? Why do we use final? Right. So once you actually set a variable as final, okay. For example, if I just say, yeah, so that is one. But generally, we don't go to that complexity of declaring a class as a final. We generally use final when you initialize a log4j. The reason being is when you declare a variable as a final, okay, you cannot change the value of that particular variable. Uh, so if I say string, okay, so I can, so this becomes a read only mode. Okay, you cannot change the value of this particular variable. Okay, so you can actually see it immediately throws a compile time error stating that this particular variable is defined as a final, so you cannot change the value as such. Okay, that is the main reason when you declare a log4j logger, you generally declare it as a final, because since this variable will be used throughout all the classes, all the functions, you declare it as a final just to make sure that you don't change the value of that particular logger at any given point of time. Okay, so that was one small topic which I wanted to explain. And yeah, that is the usage of the final as such. So any other questions? I have sent the list of IPs to Venkat. I think you are contactee for the classes sessions as such. So he will make sure you guys have the machines accessible today. Fine. So I hope you guys know what is the assignment you guys are supposed to do, right? So you guys have to go to calculator.net. I think .com, not .net. Right. So you guys have to go to this web page, calculator.net. You guys have to click or make a click event over the weight loss and the calories calculator. So you guys have to develop three versions. The first version where you straight away write a Selenium test case uh, in JUnit and make a single input over all these input statements. Okay, and click on the calculate. Once you click on the calculate, you will have to read these outputs and put it in a print statement or a log. Okay, logger.info, you guys have to log all these outputs. The second phase would be changing the same code into a page object model. Okay, so the same Selenium logic which you use, all the interactions which you do for the page have to be moved to a page object model, and then the test case has to be rewritten using the functions which you have created in the page object model. The third phase is where you're going to use the Excel, where you're going to have a set of inputs defined in the Excel. So your Selenium test case will actually read all those Excel inputs and run the test case one after the other and write back the output into an Excel once that particular test is done, iteration is done. Okay, so that is the third one. So at the end, at the third phase, you're gonna use the Selenium in JUnit using the page object model with all the loggers and try catch blocks, and the inputs will be taken from Excel and the output will be returned back to the Excel. So that is the fourth phase. Third phase. The fourth phase is same thing. The same thing which you have written in JUnit, you will have to write it back using the test engine. Okay, so whatever you guys have done in the J unit, so you just have to change the annotations and run the same test case in the test engine. Okay, so these are the four assignments which you guys have to make. Are we clear? And you guys have the time limit is today and tomorrow. So please try to close it by tomorrow. And you guys have most of the code required for accessing an Excel and etc. test case and everything. And I will also send you the today's project. I will zip the whole thing and send it to you guys so that you guys can use it. Okay, fine. Any other questions? All clear? Okay, fine. So once you guys get your access to your machines, please start working on your assignments. And we'll meet tomorrow for a doubts session where if you guys can continue your assignment, creating your assignments tomorrow. But whenever you face time, face any issues, we during the session you guys can. I'll be there online. You guys can ask any question then and there. Okay, fine. So most probably tomorrow will be the final session for this Selenium training. And after that, if you guys have any issues, you guys can always drop me a mail. I will reply back in that mail. Okay, clear? Okay. Thanks, guys.